speaker, like all of us, is family first. He's been in the Wildland Fire Service for 25 years, having spent 3 years with the LA Valley Monarchs, then a couple years with Texas Canyon Hotshots, and 20 years on Bear Divide Hotshots, where he's been the superintendent for the last 10. Brian Anderson participates heavily in facilitating staff rides and his agency's peer support program. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology, which is part of his second career plan. Huge sports fanatic, and he still plays adult softball when he's got a few minutes. Please welcome, there you are, Brian, I got you. Working with Interagency Hotshot crews, Brian Anderson.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. I think I'd have just as much fun being here if we went back to the raffle and I could see Chief Hawkins rifle through all of his tickets.
Just get on it. I want to hear what you got to say.
You gotta get some help, Chief. You gotta get some help. That's my plug for my bachelor's degree in psychology, which gives me a license to do nothing. First of all, good morning and thank you. I don't know where Chief Chavez is, but Chief, thanks for the invitation. It's always a little interesting to get asked to do something that's a little counterintuitive to everything that we do in the summer, like take a shower, comb my hair, and like use a domesticated bathroom. But to be honest with you, opportunities like this don't come every day. And when I was thinking about the capabilities and limitations of hotshot crews, I even asked Chief Chavez if that's really what you folks wanted to hear about from me. And because I thought about the people participating in the audience, and just by show of hands, how many of you still have some sort of involvement in the wildland fire arena today? Okay. So that's why I thought long and hard about it, because I had assumed safely that most of you still participate in the wildland arena today. And after about 5 minutes of milling it over, I thought, this is the perfect opportunity to give you exactly what you don't want to hear, especially based on the two previous presentations that you just heard. We're not just outpacing our own rules of engagement, folks. We're outpacing our experience levels, and we still, to this day, do not have models that can keep up in real time with the fire behavior that we experience. So put all those three things together and it equals whatever you think it equals. After 25 years of on-the-ground crew experience, I can tell you one thing and one thing only. I'm extremely nervous. I'm extremely nervous. And a quarter century for me, based on how I grew up in this agency, is not necessarily a lot of time, because I came up under people with 30 and 35 years of experience. So hopefully some of this resonates with you. What I'm gonna do is go through this presentation that I have and give you some of the paper capabilities, our standard capabilities, according to our standards for interagency hotshot crew operations. And then I'm gonna give you what I think our capabilities and limitations are as I see them today, okay? And hopefully that'll generate some discussion from you folks. I know there's some ops section chiefs, division group soups in the room that are happy to share their experience. Where's Chris Childers? There you are. I know some of you folks are happy to share some of your experience, and I'm actually going to invite some of that into the room. I don't know how many people are here, but it can be me against you, or it can be us having a conversation. I don't care. Because when we get out into the fire ground, I know what my hotshot crew is going to do for you. I just can't speak for every other hotshot crew, okay? Just know that I'm up here representing me, okay? I'm up here as a representative of the Bear Divide Hotshots only. I can't speak for every other hotshot crew. I can probably count on one hand, maybe two, the number of crews that I can speak for safely. The rest is up to you folks to determine, okay?
And some of them have a little bit to drink, and smart ass. When you go out and approach them, they're very calm, collect manner, and they tend to drop. You ask them very nicely to leave, they're endangering the public and possibly themselves. And you, they try to get lost in your own business. It's all right.
Yeah.
You guys still think that was local gun folks?
Never had that experience. Never once. Never.
Perception of hotshots. Check it out. Give me your perception. Give me all of your expectations of hotshot crews. Okay.
Send them up on the go mountains.
Okay. What else?
Best available.
Say it again.
Best available.
Supposed to be the best available, right? What else?
Hard working.
Hard working. What else?
Courageous.
Courageous. What else?
I'll be honest with you. Yeah, knowledgeable.
They'll be honest, knowledgeable. Is there nothing bad?
Yeah.
Overworked.
Overworked.
Hard to get.
Definitely hard to get, right?
Arrogant. Opinionated.
Arrogant. You don't say. Did you say opinionated?
Yes.
Really? My way is not okay to be the right way all the time? To a large degree, you guys rely on that for me to keep at least my bunch alive, right? Yeah. What else?
Yeah, right.
Arrogant and opinionated. That's
The old, come on. Ego.
what about it?
Well, we have multiple different teams that definitely comes up
That-
between the interests.
Absolutely. Unfortunately for all of us, we work in a business filled with A-type personalities. You guys don't know anything about that, do you?
Not at all.
Yeah. Let me give you my little psychology plug. Your ego is not your ego. But to a large degree, it helps us make our decisions, right? And it helps keep us safe. Right? We need that. What else? Anything else? You guys are taking it easy on me. We did this presentation for the CAL FIRE Ops group a couple years ago. Oh man, I could have ducked. Yeah, they tore us up, but guess what? We got to fire back.
That's fair.
And that's how we get on level ground. So we're arrogant, we're egotistical, we're opinionated, we're hardworking, we're courageous, we're supposed to be all of these things. At least according to you folks, right? Anything else?
Isolated.
Isolated? Sometimes we like it that way? Yeah. You bet. Say it again. What'd you say?
Go off on your own comp plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys ever been on a fire in Southern California? Have you ever had a hard time getting a word in on the radio? Now you know why we have our own communication plan. Sad news, folks. My responsibility is not to you people first. It's to my resource. And when I look their families in the eye every year and tell them that I'm going to give everything that I have to bring them back the same way they showed up, it means I need to be able to talk to them first. Right? We do what we need to. Anything else? I'll give you my one egocentric statement for the day, and then I'm going to get real humble with you for the rest of the presentation. You're looking at the best hotshot crew in the country. Sexy bunch. Said no one. So, here's what we are, at least on paper. 22 to 25 people. Hopefully all of you have heard we've gotten the authority from the Deputy of State and Private Forestry to staff to up to 25. We've got 2 pilot programs that are going to staff 30 on the Angeles National Forest starting this year. Okay? There's currently 114 of us. They come from 4 of the 5 Fed agencies, the state of Utah and Alaska Fire Service. Obviously developed specifically to fight fire in the West rugged terrain. I don't know how much you know about the history of hotshot crews, but we started off of a model based on the Civilian Conservation Corps. They started with 40-man super crews, they called them at the time, because they determined that there was a need to come up with some sort of physical Superman capability to be able to fight fires in the West rugged terrain. Then after budget cuts and World War issues, they got cut down to 20, and hotshot crews were born in the late 1940s. Okay? So that's how we were designed. That's what we were designed for. That's still, obviously, based on your feedback, the expectation of you folks today. So not a whole lot of the fundamental foundational principle has changed, at least in theory. And we're supposed to provide fast production, supposed to be highly skilled, have extensive training, advanced qualifications, and arduous physical standards. Here's the current structure and makeup. pre-25 person authorization, which is happening this year. You typically only saw one soup, one captain, and 3 squad leaders, or they call this an assistant superintendent, and 3 squad leaders, or standard module configuration for Region 5, again, pre-25 people, 1 soup, 2 captains, 2 squad bosses on down, okay? Otherwise known as a 113 or 122 configuration. I have a piece of paper that I just printed yesterday that gives you the breakdowns for all of the different regions and what the structure and makeup is going to be starting this year. This is still the minimum standard. So there's the way it looks for Region 5. Region 5 is California, for those of you that don't know that. There's the standard makeup. We just in Region 5 got the authority to hire a 3rd squad boss, which most crews in the region are at least attempting to do. So our structure is going to be a 1-2-3 configuration in this region, so long as people can fill those vacancies. Minimum qualifications. At the minimum, superintendent, task force leader, IC4, and firing boss. Hotshot superintendents in the Forest Service are the equivalent of a battalion chief in state or local government. So oftentimes when we show up, whoever's running a division, if we're on a state or local gov fire, whoever the division group soup is, we have the same qualifications and same rank most of the time, okay? At least in the Fed system. Most of the soups in this region are division soup and IC3 qualified. There's a small handful of folks that are working on operational qualifications just a little bit higher than that. The captains are strike team or task force leader, IC4 and crew boss. Squad bosses have to be crew boss and IC5 qualified. There still exists with some crews in this region a little bit higher qualification than that amongst the crews, depending on how well the crews have managed to stay together with our retention issues and whatnot. But it's not the common thing anymore like it used to be. Our capabilities, obviously direct and indirect line construction. Direct and indirect is really the only 2 ways to put out a wildland fire. Firing operations, scouting, leading heavy equipment, directing fixed and rotor wing. SAW operations, we often come with C-fallers and 3 to 6 SAW teams at least. With 25 personnel on crews, we ought to be able to run 12 SAW teams as far as I'm concerned. Having the ability to operate multiple missions at the same time. And, hopefully you folks have experienced that at some point in your careers on fires, whether you were a hotshot or running hotshot crews as a division or a task force or whatever it is that you are. That's our fundamental responsibility, is to help set the incident up for success. Whether we're all cut in line or we break down and provide overhead or provide leadership or whatever, that's the expectation of us. I know coming from you folks, hopefully you're experiencing that. I would be willing to bet that there's some people in the room that have run into some issues with that specifically, or hotshot crews' abilities to break down today. And that's largely based on some of the things that I'm going to get into when I'm done here. Yes, we have an assigned frequency for us to be able to talk called our intercrew frequency. For accountability, safety, and being able to accomplish multiple missions. So at the end of the day, if we show up on a fire somewhere and I can't get a word edgewise in on the radio, and I can talk to my folks at least, I'm good to engage. That's the bare minimum though. And then each crew now has 12 to 15 radios. So I don't know what the numbers were like when some of you folks started fighting fire way back in the day. I think for some folks that maybe there was only 2 or 3, or they didn't even exist. Or you had 1 and it looked like your car battered. But most crews have 10 to 12 radios now. So the ability to talk to each other and for everybody on the crew to hear the same information is there. That's one radio per two people, essentially. Logistics. Most of us are, by book definition, are required to be self-sufficient for 48 hours. We bumped to 72 as a result of the ask from the agencies and the pandemic. So most of us are self-sustained for 72 hours with food, water, and sleeping. We can be self-sufficient for 2 weeks so long as we're somewhat geographically close to any sort of food and water outside of what we carry on our trucks. Because we have agency purchase authority. Most crews have 3 or 4 purchase cards, and we can take care of ourselves for food, water, and fuel. Sleeping, everybody knows we sleep on the ground anyways. Spiking out from our vehicles is the best thing ever, as far as I'm concerned. We're out away from everything. We get a lot more work done. There's not a lot of travel time involved, and we can handle our own business. We love to spike out. Obviously, the commute to work is a lot shorter when we spike, and we like it that way. And then, of course, I haven't met a person yet on the planet that doesn't like a hotel over sleeping in the ground or on the ground. If you like sleeping on the ground over a hotel, good on you. I hate it. I hate it. I'll be the first one to tell you I hate being dirty and I hate sleeping on the ground if I don't have to be. But somebody's got to put food on the table for my little girls. Shifts. I don't know if how many people know this, but we can actually work 24-hour shifts if we need to. It's obviously not ideal. And why is it not ideal?
Repressed.
There's a handful of reasons. I'll give you my number one. I hate not being able to see the fire ground every day. If we're 24 on, 24 off, we don't get to see the fire ground every day. I believe that the fire ground changes every 100 feet. Imagine what it does in a 24-hour operational period. We have to start over if we're rolling like that in my mind. But pay is usually comparable, and working 16s with 8 off, so long as we're crafty with our times, we can get pretty close, if not to exactly the same, to make sure our pay is not affected. So we can work 24-hour shifts, although it's not ideal. It's real easy on our timesheets to craft 16 and then 8 hours off. Just easier that way. Yeah, fatigue sets in and whatnot after 24 hours, especially if we're doing hotshot work for 24 hours, but you get 24 hours to craft. So we can, although it's not ideal. Our work rest guidelines on the book, for every 2 hours on, we got to have an hour off. The superintendents are responsible for managing work rest. So if we end up working 48 or 50 hours on an initial attack, and it's physically impossible for us to make up all of those hours in the next couple operational periods, we're still responsible for making it up somewhere. If we work an initial to extended attack fire where there's that many hours, I would specifically ask for half of those hours down to recoup, especially with the frequency of fires and the magnitude of them and how busy we are today. And working 16-hour days on the same division or somewhat geographically close, obviously we give you solid intel and some continuity. On IAs, we can work as long as we're needed. Okay? So for the state and local gov folks in here that are used to standard issue 24-hour shifts, if you have a resource out there with the qualifications that we have, I strongly suggest you use that to your advantage and not as a crutch, because what we find is when we're working 16s and we get to meet a new division every day, we're starting over. And we spend valuable morning hours where we could be getting after fire. We spend valuable morning hours trying to set the next incoming division up for success by way of intelligence share. Because the incoming division maybe or maybe not transition with the outgoing division, and they're seeing a new piece of ground. You guys know how fast fires are moving today. Who knows if the same geographic area is even in play, okay? So it's ideal for us to be able to do that for you folks. Assignment lengths are 14 days, not including travel at the beginning or the end. If there's travel in the middle, it's included. We can extend to 21 days, good luck. I've been a suit for 10 years. I tried to extend one time, I'll never do it again. Not because I didn't think it was valuable to provide that service, especially when the most UTF orders in the country are hotshots and helicopters, but because we'll never get it approved. Unless we're in Alaska on some remote island somewhere. But our GACs have not approved any extensions that I know of to this day. And to be honest with you, and this is my opinion, there were a lot of people that worked really, really hard to get shift lengths down to 14 days. For lots of valuable reasons, and now we're almost going backwards, and I would be willing to bet you're going to see assignment lengths go back to 21 days. For good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't make a difference. However, 14 days, and we're going home. We'll come right back if you want to, but I don't do any good to you. My boys and girls don't do any good to you when they're dead, when they're done. And 14 days of hotshot work on fires today, or 14 days of wildland work anymore, requires 3 days off, because all of us, not just hotshot crews, all of us are going right back out. That's just the way that it works with the amount of fires that we have. All crews strive for the highest level of fitness. Most of you know our minimum standard is the PAC test. That measures absolutely nothing except for your ability to deal with shin splints. However, I hope all hotshot crews in the country are testing their folks beyond that capability. And our standards in our Sitco are 40 sit-ups in 60 seconds, 25 push-ups in 60 seconds, 4 to 7 pull-ups, and then a mile and a half run in 10 minutes and 35 seconds. Hopefully we're all measuring our capabilities by what we do on the hillside and not necessarily how fast we can accomplish these things. At the end of the day, the work is largely mental, and most of you folks know that, regardless of what resource you work on. The majority of our work gets done up here, and the body follows. We're certainly not invincible. Heat-related injuries happen to the best of us, happen to the best in shape. They've happened to some of the best hotshots I've ever seen. So obviously we're not invincible, although we like to think we are. Right? Crew dynamics. I don't know how many of you folks have had any sort of exposure to hotshot crews, not just in California, but to some of the outer region crews, but you probably pick up on, if you have, really, really quickly, the difference in the dynamics, the difference in the experience levels, the difference in the capabilities, the difference in the willingness to engage, etc. I happen to think and feel extremely fortunate to have grown up in a hotshot organization in Southern California, and especially on the Angeles National Forest, because not only are we the media capital of the world and work right dead center in the middle of the WUI, but we come from the most dynamic fire environment in the world. And it's only getting worse. So our learning curve for those of us that come from the outside that haven't necessarily been used to operating in that arena is steep, is really, really steep. And we're starting to see a lot of that play out due to the lack of resource availability. So when we take off and everybody's scattered to the wind in a bunch of different geographic regions, and we bring folks in from the outside that don't necessarily have the exposure to the environment we operate in, there's hesitation. That's just the way that it goes. When you don't have the slides for stuff like counter-rotating vortices or counter vortex pairs, if you don't have the slides for that and you can't predict it, or you don't have the slides to look straight up, or you're standing next to a hillside and you have dirt right in your face and don't know how to put direct line on it, you're probably going to scratch your head for a minute. So the dynamics are different. It's the same as when we go out of region when we're not used to going out of region. Folks may have different tactics that work for them that we're not used to. So trying to adapt to the pace of play in the environment that we're in is a little bit challenging. However, it looks like, based on what we're hearing and what we're seeing in the rest of the West, that their fire behavior is catching up to what we've been experiencing. Largely because I'm sure the conditions are getting similar. But know that there's different dynamics. I don't know how many of you guys have experienced the difference in typing of the crews. Anybody not understand what the difference in typing of crews in the Fed system is in IHCs versus Type 2 IA? Okay, so here's the deal. We have a very, very specific standard that we have to adhere to and go through a readiness review every year to demonstrate our ability to meet interagency hotshot crew standards. Okay? That comes with a heavy burden. We have to drill, we have to train, we have to have the qualifications, we have to have the coursework to be able to meet that standard. If for whatever reason we can't meet that standard, we drop our status. And what a hotshot suit says is we don't have the capabilities of an interagency hotshot crew, but we have the capabilities of a Type 2 IA crew. And so we have a minimum structure that we have to meet. If we're missing a squad boss and we can't fill that position, we're technically not supposed to be Type 1 interagency hotshots, because our minimum structure requires permanent or detailed positions in each one of our overhead categories. So that's extensive, and I brought our standards with us. I'm more than willing to let you folks thumb through them and check them out, and they're available on Google. So if you got your phone, you can Google standards for interagency hotshot crew operations and go through them. But a lot of crews overall in the U.S. are having to drop from Type 1 interagency hotshot crew to Type 2 IA or lower for all kinds of reasons. Can't find people that are qualified, can't find people willing to stay. People are leaving to go to other places that pay more to allow them to be home more, etc. Whatever the reason is, we're dropping status. And I guarantee you, most of them, if not all of them, I didn't sign up to be a Type 2 IA suit. I don't want to do that, and I got to put my ego to the side most of the time to be able to do that. I can't speak for everybody else. I guarantee you there's crews out there that are walking this line real fine. Real fine. Because they don't want to drop status. Because they don't want to be thought of as less than. Because our inherent ability as fire service personnel is to do more with less. Or to make it work. Or to solve problems. Okay? But we have standards to adhere to. And if folks aren't meeting those standards, they're obligated to drop status there. And our certification process is anywhere from a readiness review on the forest to a a multi-day recertification or initial certification, depending on if a crew's going from type 2 and they're trying to get hotshot status. That's a full certification. That takes a couple of days and is really extensive. For our readiness review, so long as we meet our own qualifications ahead of time, that's some fire management officials and maybe an additional soup on the forest or somewhere close to come out and certify that we are who we say we are and that we can do what we say we can do. And that's simple demonstrations at the beginning of every year. Why not shower? Well, because it's bad for our image. If everybody saw clean hotshots in fire camp, you would probably know that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. In all seriousness, when we're out working all day, this is probably why a lot of you don't shower or just haven't had the time. Like, if it's a difference between showering and sleeping my folks, sorry, the shower is just not going to happen. Like, we'll find a creek or a stream somewhere if there's any water that exists in the western U.S. anymore to jump in. Like, that's the bottom line. We got time when we get back into fire camp to eat food, rehab our tools, to get ready for the next day so we don't disappoint you folks, and then go to sleep. To make sure we get some good quality sleep, whatever that looks like. So that's why. And obviously professionalism and cleanliness, when we're not in our day-to-day operations and when we're in travel status, it'll show itself. Most of the time. I told you I took a shower this morning. We're off to a good start, right? So challenges today. This is not new news to most of you, if not all of you. Retention and pay. What our hiring practices are. And the crew locations. There's crews in California right now that are having trouble filling overhead positions, and it is not just necessarily based on where they're located. The Los Padres Hotshots are having trouble filling their overhead positions right now. And they're on top of Santa Barbara. They're one of the originals. And that exists all the way up and down the state for any one of a number of different reasons. Okay? Retention is a big deal. It's hard for me to convince a 21-year-old to come to work for me and let me kick their teeth in for 15 bucks an hour when I drive past a sign for Chipotle that says now hiring at $17.50. I'm more inclined to tell them to go work at Chipotle anyway so I can get a discount. However, like, that's the reality that we face anymore. So that's one. Our hiring practices are lending themselves to hotshot crews being infused with people that have never been hotshots. Wrap your head around that for a second based on the two previous presentations that you heard, folks. Hotshots were relied upon because of the amount of fires that we go to and how busy we are to provide their expertise based on the slides they have in their head to set everybody up for success. And that's not to say that other people in the wildland arena don't have those slides. I'm not taking anything away from anybody else's experience. But there used to be, when Bear Divide or LP or Del Rosa or whomever else pulled into fire camp and an ops section chief or a division group soup saw them, the tension would come out of the air. I would be willing to bet that that's not most people's experience today. And I'm a hotshot soup standing up here telling you that. I'm going to read you something. The wildland fire culture has developed in such a way as to defer the expertise of IHC crews above most other resources on a fire. If hotshots like the plan, then it must be a good plan. Or so the thinking goes. While this heuristic has treated the fire service well in the past, it becomes more and more problematic if deference is given mistakenly to a resource without the level of expertise that is assumed. Over the course of the last several years, the experience levels of hotshot crews has become diluted. Long-tenured interagency hotshot crew superintendents seem to be becoming a thing of the past. The interagency hotshot I'll stop right there because the rest is pointed specific. Anybody know where that's from? It's from the El Dorado Fire Learning Review. The rest goes on to share some very specific and pointed comments about Big Bear due to lack of expertise and overstaffing of administratively determined employees probably didn't have the experience necessary to pull that off. I'm glad every single one of you are looking at me directly in my face when I say this to you. If there were anybody that you wanted to try and pull something off like that on that day on that fire, it would have been Big Bear. Because they're one of the few crews left, at least they were until this last round of fire hire, we're one of the few crews left that actually had some on the ground hotshot expertise. And you can get into hindsight all you want. I would strongly suggest we deter ourselves from that because we have all of the information now. And you just got done hearing a presentation from a fire behavior expert, in my opinion, because I agree with Chief Hawkins. That was an incredible presentation about fire behavior that we see on the ground today that's hard at best to predict. We've already outpaced our own rules of engagement. And you couple that with all the challenges that we face and the idea that we're filling up hotshot crews with people that weren't hotshots, that's a recipe for disaster, folks. I don't know how else to frame it up for you. Sorry to put a damper on your conference. But fire season's already here. I just got done with a strategic operations course last week, and an ops section chief on a Region 3 incident management team said this is the first year in Region 3's history that we've had this many incident management teams engaged this early in our season. Great. Then we hear from a technology development presenter about those models still not being able to keep up, followed by fire behavior that we can't predict and experience walking out the door. At the end of the day, hotshot crews are here to work for you. From my perspective specifically, it's my responsibility to make you guys look good. Period. It's to set a division group soup, a task force leader, and ops section chief up for success. However we do that, we're supposed to solve problems. That's the service that we're supposed to provide. I'm only one crew. I can't speak for the rest of them. I can speak for a couple. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into our structure and our culture today, and my perspective on the outlook, because it's not bright. At least not in the current model that we're under. How you use them and how you support them is wholeheartedly up to you. I'm sure you guys and gals have found different ways that works. We typically require very little: food, water, and fuel. It's real simple. And a hotel every once in a while is nice. But it's not necessary. So that's a little bit about what we're supposed to look like on paper and what's really going on. What do you guys got? Yeah, Fred. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, sir. So a challenge that's been going on for quite some time is our how to properly reduce rescues while we're not working on base 19. So that's a challenge, right? They give you an assignment, you know the pools, yeah, we'll take it, no an option. So it's been my experience over the years that sometimes they'll take the options, and other times you get sent to what I call division in Siberia. Somewhere that's been cold for a week, long enough, and then you get sent home. How do you deal with that?
How do I deal with mopping up in Siberia?
Well, how do you deal with how to properly reduce risk?
So I'll give you my perspective on it. My responsibility, if I can't accomplish what's being asked, is to provide alternatives. And my responsibility on wildland fires is not to keep my guys on a piece of dirt for 14 days just because I want to line their pockets with money. So if I'm sitting on a cold piece of dirt, it's my responsibility to make sure I use my resource to the best of its ability. And if that means it's better served on a neighboring incident that's losing structures and needs people to go direct, then that's what the conversation I have with that ops section chief. So if I use my slides to say, I'm sorry, but we can't do this, I'm obligated to say, but we can do this. I can't guarantee you that that's what's going on out there today. Because I've personally witnessed a lot of, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And in that case, I encourage everybody in the room that has any sort of authority on wildland fires to send people home with bad reviews, to call their home units, and have a conversation with that supervisor. If they just aren't willing to go to work. Like, I don't know how many jobs are out there that if you show up for work and you don't work, you're still employed. Does that answer your question, Fred? And then again, this is just my perspective, folks. I wish I could speak for all 114, but I can't. Yes, sir.
Brian, do you have a snapshot of maybe south off and north ops, how many are going to be type 1 and how many are going to be type 2 going into the season right now?
Yeah, that number usually hovers around 50% and slowly declining. And it could be a matter of somebody missing a key overhead position to an entire crew getting decimated because of fire hire and some sort of retention issues. You guys have all been to the MODOK before. Like, it's not quite the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. And you pull a kid that's a barista at Starbucks in LA out of there and put him on the MODOK, it's a little bit of a culture shock. Yeah.
How do the Hotshots communicate as the season goes from lesson learned? Are you lumped in with the rest of the wildland community, or do you guys have a way of communicating with the teams with real-time lessons learned as the season's going on?
Okay, so ask the question one more time so I make sure I'm hearing you clearly.
Just to understand, is there a communication link between all the hotshot crews of lessons learned real time as the season's going on? You share like the airline industry, or are you just lumped in with lessons learned screen sheets and stuff just like that?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of your question, is there a hotshot, do we all talk to each other about lessons learned? That answer is yes. So in Region 5, we have 50% of the crews. So there's 48 or 50 crews, just a little less than half of the crews in the region. And we all meet at least once a year to go over exactly that, lessons learned. We AR our fire seasons, essentially. So we share all of that information, and most of the soups, especially because of the way technology is today, most of the soups have gotten real good at sharing on the ground important lessons learned during the season too, because we're all in an email chain together. So we share that information in real time. The soups on the Angeles, there's 5 of us. We're in a text thread that lasts year round. That's a lot of crap talking about sports to, hey, let's get together with the wives, to, hey, we're mobilizing for Region 3, to, hey, I just ran into this knucklehead, please stay away from him. Like, we talk to each other regularly. And then we have steering committees at the national and regional level too, so information's disseminated all the way through the hotshot organizations up and down. Does that answer your question? Good deal. Anybody else? I wish I had better news for you folks. I told our Region 5 fire director about 3 or 4 years ago that the hotshot crews would be extinct in 10 years. And I really hope that's not the path that we're going down, but based on the retention issues, the hiring practices that we have, and our lack of ability to find people that want to do good old hard work, we're running out of our efforts to be able to sustain what it requires to do hotshot work. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could share on maybe changing perspectives or opinions of how hotshots are portrayed by incident management teams or media or any related stuff.
You mean the age-old adage that we chase cars, bike the mailman, and drink beer?
Well, I know what you guys don't want to be. I know what you guys don't want, but the reality is it's what people want and expect. So, for the public and the media.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, social media has really kind of taken a turn for the worse over the last couple of years, and how it operates internally, and we're all dealing with that.
Yeah.
Have you seen, do you have like just anything you want to share on a perspective of what you think, how things have gone, and how you hope, and what you hope?
Yeah.
How you guys are covered and portrayed?
Yeah.
So that I can take that back and share that from my own forest and any other.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, and I'll make this quick because I know we're running out of time. One, how we were portrayed is so far night and day from how we are today. And there's a handful of crews out there that are trying to use the platforms that we're allowed to use. Some of us may have even gone just a little above and beyond what we're allowed to use to be able to change that message. And the best I can tell you is we're trying to continue those efforts. As a matter of fact, some folks have doubled those efforts to be able to give off the image and the portrayal that, one, we're not who we used to be, and two, that we can dress nice, we can clean up, we do speak well, we are educated. We don't necessarily chase cars and bite the mailman. However, we can do that if we need to. Because make no mistake about it, you guys expect me to kick the fire's ass when we show up. And I don't ever want that to go away. And I tell that's my theme every year for my crew is you have one word to live by, and one word only, and that's smash. And when it's not time to smash, you make sure you come off in public as the most professional and the most elite wildland firefighter that exists. And that means you tuck your shirt in, you wear your hat, you clean your face up, and you shake hands with people, you take the time to introduce yourself, and you take advantage of every opportunity that you get to explain what Hotshots do so that people change their perception. And that takes an absolute army. The good news is technology moves extremely fast today, so any word you get out to anybody will either really, really help us or God only knows how people interpret it and it could kill us. So does that answer your question? Yeah, we're trying hard to squash those images, and folks are using the opportunities that they can.
Chris wants to say something.
Yes, sir, Chris. Good to see you.
Thanks for being here. Thank you very much for that. That presentation really helped. I think that really was good for all of us. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. Can I take a picture with John's tickets?